Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Wednesdays wherever you may be across this great country or this great land. I don't know. Let me say as I start off, I don't know that in my entire life in media, I have ever gotten more favorable responses outside of social media than for what I have said and talked about from a factual basis surrounding the coronavirus from the moment this story really took off. Everybody has been selling doom and gloom. Millions of people are going to die. You can't leave your house. This is the scariest thing that has ever existed in the history of mankind. And all I have said is look at the data. I don't know that I'm buying it based on what's already happened in Asia. It wasn't like I was trying to pretend that I was an expert on things. I just was calm and I looked at what had already happened in China and South Korea and Singapore and Japan. And I said, guys, if this is the deadliest virus that we have ever seen and that we need to be terrified of it, don't you think it would have killed a lot more people in Asia than it did? I'm not arguing that it's not a real thing or that you shouldn't be aware of it or that you shouldn't be washing your hands or trying to keep yourself away from somebody who might be sick in an intelligent fashion. But this is, I believe, a great example of what happens in a social media age. Let me just tell you this from the get-go. There are lots of people who had similar opinions to me in public that share their opinions or to raise any objections to the hysteria because they were afraid of being shouted down by an active social media mob of coronavirus bros who wanted to convince all of us that we were going to die and that millions of people were going to die as well. That's the truth. I have been just saying, let's look at the facts from the get-go. And as we have continued throughout, the facts have more and more moved in my direction. And this morning, when I woke up at 4:30 a.m. and went and got the Wall Street Journal, look at the main editorial from two Stanford doctors arguing, is the COVID-19, the coronavirus, as deadly as they say? Number one article here, massive to read. I put it out there for all of you to see, and I think it's important for all of you to see. And there are a couple of different things in here that are particularly interesting. But the one that I believe is the most interesting, they said this, I'm reading directly from this article. Two Stanford doctors said, if our surmisal of 6 million cases in the United States right now is accurate, right now we would have a mortality rate of 0.01%, assuming a 2-week lag between infection and death. I'm reading directly from the article. This is 1/10 of the flu mortality rate of 0.1%. Okay, I want to reiterate this. Their surmisal here in this article is not just that the coronavirus might be the same level of danger as the flu. Their surmisal, based on the data that they are analyzing, is that in reality, the flu is 10 times as deadly as the coronavirus. I want to repeat this. These two Stanford doctors today in the Wall Street Journal are arguing that not only is the coronavirus, remember people were furious anytime you would mention it in the same word with the flu? Not only is the coronavirus, according to their data potentially here, not only is the coronavirus not as deadly as the flu, it might be 1/10 as flu. Let me repeat that. The flu, according to the data that they are putting forth, may be 10 times as deadly as the coronavirus. Yet we have shut down the entirety of the nation. We have shut down global commerce in the world. Now, I think that people are starting to recognize the big flaw here in the numbers, and I'm going to get to it for a minute. I'm not a mathematician. but I'm a pretty smart dude. And if you're hearing this, you're like, oh, that sounds like what Clay was saying several days ago. Yeah, it's because it's what I was writing and what I was saying based on the NBA. We'll get to that in a sec. But what you're seeing in the stock market is yesterday was the greatest day in the stock market since 1933 in the Dow on a percentage basis. The single greatest day in the history of the stock market going all the way back to 1933. Today, as we tick down towards the closing bell, we are up around 1,200 points. The day after the greatest day in the history of the stock market, we are not selling off. We are adding to the steam and bringing even more goodness for those of us who are long-term holders of stocks into our portfolio. We're up another 1,200 points when I sat down to start talking with you guys. That is because intelligent money managers out there are starting to look at this data. They read the Wall Street Journal. Some of them even follow your boy and have been sending me emails saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. We can't shut down the economy over the coronavirus. Here is what we need to do. We need more data, okay? We need massively more data, and I'm going to get to that in a sec. But more importantly, we have to acknowledge a massive denominator problem that we have. And when I say a denominator problem, I mean this. We are dividing the number of people who are dying by the number of people who are testing positive for the coronavirus. That's a broken system. That is a fundamentally broken system because we're not catching all the people with minor cases of the coronavirus who never go get tested at all. And what's ironic is we don't count the flu that way. If we counted the flu based on the number of people who were actually identified with the flu death rate would be in the teens. The reason we don't do that is because we know the flu is infinitely more prevalent. And if you are sick enough to go see a doctor, then that means that you can get an official flu test. But most of you out there who have ever had the flu don't even go to the doctor. You just stay at home. You know you got the flu. You know it sucks. You may take Tamiflu. You probably just get in bed and sleep. So we've got a massive denominator problem. When we say, oh, the number of people that have died in New York as a percentage that have tested positive, it's like 0.8%. But that's the percentage of the people who tested positive. Think about all the other people out there who have the flu that didn't test positive in the first place. That drives down the overall death rate to a position, as these guys say in the Wall Street Journal, these two Stanford doctors. People say, oh, you're not a doctor. Why should I listen to you? You should listen to me because I'm a smart dude, all right? I'm pretty smart, all right? You can disagree with a lot of things that I say, but pretty much every test I've ever measured, I'm in the 99.9 go-on percentile, all right? I process information well. I analyze information well. If I had wanted to be a doctor, I would have been a doctor. Instead, I went to law school and got double graduate degrees in other subjects at Vanderbilt. But this idea that like, oh, you're not a doctor, so I can't listen to you. The question is, are you smart enough to be a doctor? If you're smart enough to be a doctor, then you should listen to smart people. And honestly, just because you're a doctor doesn't mean that you're going to make the right decision. This epidemiologist just got called out yesterday by Oxford, the doctors. I shared that as well, saying that he was totally wrong, the dude who said 2 million people are going to die. The guy who said 2 million people are going to die is laughably wrong at this point. You can't make that argument in any way possible. It's not remotely a reasonable perspective to have. It just isn't. So when you actually look at the data, what we need is two things. And this is what these Stanford doctors said as well, but I told you this on Friday. We need more randomized testing. We need to have people out there, a collection of men and women, gay, straight, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, the entire footprint of the United States population to find out how many of them are presently testing positive for the coronavirus. And then we also need an antibody test so that we can see how many people, when we take your blood, how many people already have had the coronavirus and don't even know that they have it? Okay? This is a solution. This is a big solution using facts. Now, I think what has happened here is, first of all, Gallup polled the American population. And they just released this poll. I tweeted it out. 60% of people have agreed with the way that Donald Trump has responded to the coronavirus. As if you needed more evidence that Twitter isn't real life. There you have it. I think a huge percentage of people allowed their disdain to be out there arguing against Donald Trump, period. It didn't even matter what he said. They wanted the coronavirus to be a massive thing because they hate Donald Trump. I believe there's a small segment of the population which is far more active on Twitter that saw this as an opportunity because of their Trump derangement syndrome. Whatever Donald Trump is connected to, they lose their minds. I think that there is a small percentage of the population which is vastly over-exaggerated on social media that responded in that way. And the problem with that is it clouds your judgment, which is why I would tell you this. When all this is said and done, and I think it's going to be done in the next month or so, I want you to sit back and I want you to think about this. Who that you read or listen to was the most rational, the most logical, the most reasonable in analyzing this incredible story? I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find very many people in all of media who were better at talking about the coronavirus than I was. I think you're going to find almost no one. And I would just tell you that. Analyze this, use it in an intelligent fashion, and remember it going forward, beyond a shadow of a doubt. Okay? So this is, I think, important to take away. Here's the other thing. We have created a universe in social media where divergent thought is not allowed. And this troubles me as a First Amendment absolutist. We need to have battles in the marketplace of ideas. People need to argue for different sides, not on a personal level, but just because the public deserves to see a variety of opinions on a variety of different topics. And what I see happen with social media is a consensus opinion takes root, and if you question the consensus opinion, you are attacked. The coronavirus bros, if you have been reading my mentions, have been up in arms at me for this entire month for having the gall to share any positive news at all, for having the gall to share any suggestion other than millions of people are going to die. And so, why is that? It leads to, I believe, a lot of people in public places being afraid to share their actual opinion because of the consequences that they fear. This is a big deal in the grand scheme of things. You need to think about it. All right? You need to think about it in a big way. I think I just accidentally flipped the camera, blocking somebody. How do I flip it back here? Let's see if I can flip it back. There we go. Apologies there. We lost me for a minute. Had to block somebody out, and as a result, you lost me on the screen for a minute. But now I'm back. Your boy is here. Clay Kyle. Used a bazooka when I should have used it as a sniper rifle. So this is, I think, in the grand scheme of things, an incredibly important lesson about the way we respond to stories such as these going forward. All right? That's my takeaway. I'll actually respond to questions that you guys might have now. I haven't on Periscope in a while. What questions do you guys have about this coronavirus story? Somebody said, can you speak to the legal rights? I think this is a fascinating question. I think this is an utterly fascinating question. How would you analyze the legal rights situation from mayors acting, from governors acting, all of these different people who are restricting the flow of commerce? I think there's likely to be a lot of lawsuits. I think it's not going to remain an issue for long enough, but I do think it's a fascinating question. Does a random mayor have the right to shut down every bar and restaurant in a city most people just acquiesced. I don't know what the law would say. I suspect it will depend on who the judge was and also what the overall mayoral powers in individual states and cities, what they have. I'm going to block this guy. It's interesting. It's interesting the way that people respond. For better or worse, when data changes, I adjust my opinion. And you can criticize me a lot for that. But I look at every, for instance, sporting event as a new court case that comes out. And eventually, if I'm wrong, I will adjust my opinion. And so what is fascinating is so many people are not like that. They decide what their opinion is, and then it doesn't matter what any of the facts reflect. They are going to believe their opinion from the get-go. I am hyper attuned to facts. For better or worse, I adjust on the fly all the time. And I think you have to start to recognize that the media is constantly selling you fear porn. So I'm skeptical anytime I hear, oh, this is going to kill us all, because I just don't buy into it. Doesn't mean we might not get killed all the time. And if you ever hear me be the guy who's like, oh, this is serious, I'm terrified of this, then maybe you need to as well, okay? But the media, and this is going to be an issue for the media, I think, as everybody self-assesses the way that they covered the coronavirus. What's ironic is the media has driven up their ratings at a massive degree, right? Based on coronavirus fear porn. But in the process, they have destroyed the economy, which means even though their ratings have surged, the overall advertiser dollars that they're making are plummeting. So I think a lot of smart business people are going to look at this and say, wait a minute, there's a sweet spot where we drive ratings, but we don't destroy the economy. Because it's great if Fox News and MSNBC and CNN and all these networks have infinitely more people watching. Their ratings have gone up. But the reality is their revenue is going to plummet because in the process, they've destroyed the economy. And they've done it not in a very intelligent fashion. And so, again, I think this is important in a big way. Will college football happen in 2020? Yes. I would be stunned if college football doesn't happen in 2020. If I were forecasting right now, I think the PGA and NASCAR will come back sometime in May. I think the NBA and Major League Baseball and the NHL will come back sometime in June. They may initially start without crowds present, but I think we will have sports from a golf and a NASCAR perspective by May, maybe without crowds present. And then I think by June, the major team sports, the NHL, the NBA, and Major League Baseball will all be back. Tennis could also come back. You got a substantial separation between tennis players. I would think they'd be back probably by the French Open. If I were guessing in the world of tennis in terms of majors, I would think they'd be back by June. I believe that there will be a massive increase in the stock market. I think that people will immediately turn the page. I think as we get more data, we're going to find out that the coronavirus is much more commonplace in our country. I would say the big positive, in my opinion, is that it actually makes a lot more sense to look forward as we go forward. It makes a lot more sense to think about the pandemic that might come in the future that's much more deadly, but the coronavirus is not it. Somebody just said, well, wait a minute, you are blocking people on your show. The answer is, of course I am. And I block people on Twitter too. If you are out there and you are hopping in and you are a coronavirus bro and you only exist to spread fear and doom and gloom, why would I allow you to come onto my page and connect with my audience? I believe in the First Amendment. That doesn't mean I believe somebody should be able to show up on my front lawn and protest, right? Like, you have the right to protest. You don't have the right to come on to my event and protest at my event. You can go find your own audience elsewhere. That's what people who understand the First Amendment understand. Like, I have the right to control my opinion and spread it to my audience. You don't have the right to talk to my audience if I don't believe you deserve the right to talk to my audience. It's a big difference. Do you understand that? Are you smart enough to understand it? Not that complicated. And I probably read 5% of the comments. Actually, a lot more people ask me to block people than end up actually getting blocked. So I read like 5% of the comments, and then I'll look over and somebody's like, get that guy. Or like 10 people are like, you need to get that guy. And so there you go. There you go. The way to break it down. I don't think that a coronavirus bro who's out there like, the world's going to blow up, the world's going to die, and they dive into the comments every time I comment and share an opinion, I don't think they have the right to reach my audience. I've worked for a decade plus, 15 years, to develop the audience that I have. Why should you be able to take 5 seconds to reach my audience? I don't think that's an equal comparison at all. So break it down that way. It's pretty easy. Yeah, I'll block both you're nuts, Lee. Bye. You're dead forever. All right. Couple of other things. The Tiger King. Did everybody watch The Tiger King? I don't know how many of you have watched its #1 trending show on Netflix, by the way. It is absolutely phenomenal, riveting television. I'm actually curious. Let me know on Facebook and let me know on Periscope how many of you have actually watched The Tiger King so far. What blows my mind, there's so many different things that I want to talk about with The Tiger King. We probably need to do a whole Tiger King radio show at some point this week. Carol is every bit as bad as the other tiger breeders. All right. First of all, if you're in the exotic animal marketplace, you are probably crazy. But it says something about this documentary that the most sane person is the employee who gets her arm torn off and then ends up going back to work 5 days later. An employee at the Tiger Park gets her arm torn off and goes back to work 5 days later, isn't willing to keep her hand because it's going to take too long if they try to put her hand back on. It's unbelievable. The guy who is Dr. Antol or whatever his name is, who has basically a harem of women that work with him at the Tiger Park and pays them to get boob jobs. Like the entire Tiger Guy cult is unbelievable. And ultimately, I think my favorite character might truly be the campaign manager of Joe Exotic. The campaign manager of Joe Exotic, who we met at Walmart in the ammo section, is an incredible interview throughout. Also, the in-game scenarios with, and I'm bad with names, but the guy who ends up owning the animal park, who has the Vegas connections, shows up in a Ferrari at the animal park, and he's got a pregnant girlfriend, and he says he got to pick the nanny, and he just picks a smoke show. That in and of itself is pretty funny. And how about the chubby guy with the incredible hair, Jeff Lowe? Jeff Lowe, that in and of itself is pretty funny. But how about the jet ski scene? The jet ski scene with the guy who went involved with the FBI to put away the Tiger King in jail. I felt like a rig job was totally in effect there. I feel like he could have gone to prison, and everybody in their industry could go to prison. We got to do a show entirely on the Tiger King. The guy riding off on his jet ski, who also owned all the strip clubs. I mean, all these guys, you think to yourself as you're watching the Tiger King, all right, that guy's crazy. They can't get any crazier than that. And then they just keep building a pyramid of insanity that continues to grow higher and higher. The music videos from Joe Exotic, I just watched it and I was like, how is this real life? How in the world can this remotely be real life? The whole thing is just the wedding with the 3 husbands. How about the fact that Joe Exotic gets better looking dudes than like 99% of single women out there? I mean, I'm a straight guy, but he got like 2 young, incredibly good looking dudes to marry him. I mean, if you were out there and you translated those guys into girls, I mean, we're talking about what, solid 8s on a scale of 1 to 10? Joe Exotic had, not the first one who had all the teeth that he lost because of meth. But the next two dudes were incredibly young. The funeral of Travis was, I couldn't barely watch when he starts to sing and he talks about Travis putting his balls on his face all the time at the eulogy. I couldn't believe the entire funeral scene. And then the fact that they opened the pizza place and they feed all the tigers with the expired meat, but they're also making all the pizzas with the expired meat too. I mean, the whole thing is just unbelievable. The entire thing is just absolute insanity. If you haven't watched it yet, we're gonna do a Tiger King. Yeah, $10,000 a year. He says he can feed a tiger for $3,000 a year. The entire thing is, if you haven't watched it, it's the #1 trending show on Netflix right now. A lot of people are at home. A lot of you have time. It's definitely worth watching. The employees take the food that's expired. They get to go through it and pick their favorite before they go feed the rest of the tigers. They paid the employees $100 a week. There are so many unbelievable stats. Now, they got to live there, but they lived in absolute dregs. I can't believe it. All right. Appreciate all of you. My name is Clay Travis. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. This has been Outkick the Show. Kisses. I'll see y'all.